Hello moin, my name is Luca, some people online might also know me as Logseq, and these good old sheets of paper are what flashcards used to look like back in the day. But everything changed with the release of a revolutionary new open source flashcard software called Anki in the year 2006. Over the last 18 years, a literal cult following has built around this program, but now that we are in 2024, even approaching 2025, and a wave of new revolutionary learning tools is approaching on us, I think it's more than time for us to reevaluate our options. So is Anki dead, a thing of the past that's long succeeded, or are these new tools even unworthy of being called rivals? Let's take a deep dive into the flashcard game and answer these questions as well as a few more. Along the way, we are also going to take a look at the privacy implications in case you're into that thing just like I am. So stick around. The first thing we should do is take a step back and look at the broader picture. What is our ultimate goal? We want to learn in the most efficient way possible regardless of the methods we use. So naturally, we should ask ourselves, why even use flashcards? Despite most of us, me included, having made bad experiences with them in school for having to write down vocabs as homework from dictionaries, there actually lies some real and scientifically based value in them. When it comes to learning with our monkey brains, there are two fundamental concepts we need to acknowledge. One, the forgetting curve, and two, active memorization. These two might sound like very complicated scientific terms, but once you break them down, they're actually rather easy to understand. So let's do exactly that. The forgetting curve basically describes that we tend to remember things less and less as time progresses if we don't use the knowledge. If you ever were in a situation where you had no problem doing a complex task from your day job, but failed to remember where this tool you only use once a year is placed, you experience this phenomenon hands-on. All of us struggle with this, and we tend to only really remember an information that we regularly use. From an evolutionary standpoint, this also makes absolute sense. Our monkey brains burn quite a lot of energy, and storing an information that we never use is just a waste of energy. But this also means that while studying, we need to revisit topics we already had a look at quite regularly in order to keep the information active. And that's something you can do beautifully with flashcards. You study a few of them every day and cycle through your stack of cards, thus revisiting all the topics you wrote down ever since you started and keeping the memory active. This concept of regularly revisiting topics you already know is also called spaced repetition. The other crucial aspect of learning that I call active memorization is the fact that we humans always tend to remember information better if we actually work with it instead of just reading about it. Sure, you might be able to remember that obscure address from a magazine for quite a few days, but the very complicated math equation you had to work with all day long will stick in your brain unequally longer. If we want to learn for an extended period of time, this implies that we can't just read a text about a topic we already studied again and again to keep it active, but actually have to work with it in order to do so. Actively working with the topic every time we revisit it would be the best, of course, but most of us just don't have the time to do so since it's quite wasteful. So a good middle ground is something called active recall. It's where you only get the name of a topic you need to remember and then have to access that information from your brain in order to answer the question, thus actively recalling everything you know about it. And guess what you do with flashcards? You write the topic on one side, then try to memorize what's on the other side, and finally check if you were correct. This combination of spaced repetition, aka revisiting every topic you already know regularly, as well as active recall, where you have to actively recall the memory you stored in your brain, makes flashcards such a powerful tool for learning detailed knowledge. Once you get used to them, they become downright magical to use. But I'll warn you, they are not without cost. You have to learn them every day for a few minutes. They need to be complemented with a broader overview of a topic like a flow map, and you still need some active training like doing exercises. If you get this right though, they'll easily become one of the most powerful tools in your learning skill set, and you'll maybe even start to miss them. Anki as a flashcard tool has become so popular over the last 18 years, not because it was the first flashcard software to ever exist, or because it looks especially good. The award of being the first flashcard software to ever be developed probably goes to SuperMemo from the 1980s. And for the second one, have you ever looked at Anki's interface? It's rough to put it friendly. No, it has become so popular because it makes it impressively easy to use these active recall as well as spaced repetition techniques even without knowing much about them. You simply create a deck and start adding flashcards with whatever content you like on them. This can range from simple vocabs over screenshots from lecture slides like I do for example, to your own summaries of topics. Then you only need to invest a few minutes every day into studying them as well as rating how easy it was to memorize them, and you are set. The SM2 or newly FSRS spaced repetition algorithm used by Anki then automatically determines how often you need to see a card and arranges the cards accordingly for you to study. Quite magical, isn't it? Another major reason for its popularity is that it's free of charge as well as open source. This allows anyone to use it no matter their financial background and drastically lowers the border of starting to use it. Just imagine still being unsure whether or not a flashcard software is something for you and then having to choose between a free and a paid one. At least I would choose the free one 7 days a week and twice on Sunday over the paid one for getting started. Having to spend a not insignificant amount of money on a license for some other programs is a real disadvantage for them and thus an advantage of Anki. But we also shouldn't underestimate the impact of Anki being open source. Some may just understand it as the advantage of the source code being freely available to everyone in the public, but the added value actually goes much deeper in this case. Most importantly for Anki, its open nature has led to the development of a gigantic plugin ecosystem that greatly enhances its capabilities and thus add even more value to using Anki. One excellent example of this plugin ecosystem working out is the image occlusion plugin. It's basically a necessity for every medicine or biology student and has contributed quite a significant amount to the popularity of Anki in these groups. The cherry on top of the cake are the free community features like shared decks. These allow anyone with an easy to create Anki web account to share their own decks, rate other users' decks and improve upon them. Anyone in the Anki family, even those without an Anki web account, can download these decks for free and basically get straight to studying. No other flashcard software at the time had these features, and this basically made Anki the default choice for everyone who wants to get started straight away and doesn't want to have to create all of their materials on their own first. Some universities, as well as schools, even use Anki as their default way for distributing study material, and that says something. Thus, it has basically become the default choice for flashcard software, just like Windows has become the default choice for operating systems and Google has become the default choice for search engines. Just with the caveat of Anki being much less evil and actually sticking to its core community. But is Anki still rightly the king of flashcard apps? Or has there been some development over the last 18 years that made it time to finally call it dead? Especially over the last 3-4 years, a few of new and very interesting programs have emerged that specifically rival Anki and claim to be better all around. One of their biggest claims is an easier workflow with less steps involved to convert your notes into flashcards. Ideally, they even want to fully automate the process, and as a university student that spends about half an hour every day creating cards, I can tell you that this would be a huge time saver. But they also want to look better, be easier to use, and integrate a whole lot of new features like AI integration. If all of this holds true, I think Anki is actually in a very rough spot. In order to figure this out, we're going to look at the following programs: Obsidian, RemNote of course, and for good measure also Logseq. Obsidian is a well-known personal knowledge base as well as note-taking software loved by many around the globe due to its powerful plugin ecosystem as well as vibrant community. What makes it interesting for people who rely on flashcards is the fact that you can integrate flashcard-related features straight into it through third-party plugins. When it comes to just note-taking, this is where Obsidian truly shines. It uses a simple-to-use and easy-to-understand Markdown syntax, which supports everything from plain text to more complicated elements like math equations or code blocks. Thus, it's highly flexible, and this means that it fits into a whole variety of use cases, from writing essays to scientific papers or just taking notes in lectures like I do in computer science. You can organize your notes simply with folders, just like you know it from your file system, or by linking notes together in sort of a second brain approach, or any combination of the two. This allows you to easily organize your knowledge as your knowledge base grows, and stay on top of it. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, it's flashcard support. Obsidian has several free plugins available for flashcard support, including the very popular spaced repetition one, which adds all flashcard related features directly into the Obsidian user interface. However, while this works well for simple flashcard creation, it has nowhere near the features found in specific applications just like Anki or RemNote. For example, it doesn't natively support some advanced features like closed cards, where a section of the text you highlight is hidden, or image occlusion cards, where you hide certain elements from images. It still works beautifully well for creating simple flashcards, but once they get more complicated, so does your setup, and you need to spend quite a lot more time manually improving them to a point where they can be used. If you solely work with text though, and you can structure your notes into a predictable format like a heading with the topic and the text featuring the concept at hand, then it's great because your flashcards will be created in a second. But at least I found myself switching back to Anki quite a lot while creating my cards due to them involving quite a lot of diagrams, handwriting or code blocks, which simply isn't supported that well for the automatic card generation yet. One standout feature that Obsidian offers is its privacy focus though. Unlike some of the other tools we'll look at, Obsidian still is closed source software, but it's still highly regarded for respecting user privacy. For example, it offers an end-to-end encrypted syncing feature for a paid subscription that makes sure your notes stay safe while syncing across devices. That's a huge win for those who care about privacy and can't be taken for given, even these days. That said, there still sadly are some drawbacks I have to mention with it. First, unlike the main desktop app, which is completely free to use for personal use, the syncing feature actually requires a paid subscription. While I truly appreciate the added security and the fact that it even exists, that's still a bit of a downside compared to the free competition. But of course, I also get that companies need to make money, especially one that's so privacy focused like Obsidian is. Second, the mobile app, while still functional, feels a bit convoluted to me and could use a bit more polish in order to truly get up there. This holds especially true for the flashcard review interface, which just sucks, and that's not even trying to comparing it to the excellent one from Anki Mobile or RemNote. All in all, I would say that Obsidian is an exceptional tool for note-taking as well as personal knowledge management, which are its primary focuses. It only supports flashcards to some degree though. If you need something that has advanced support for complex cards like closed deletions or image occlusion cards, you're best fitted with something else honestly. It still might support them in the future, but it will certainly involve some additional effort in order to get it working and maintain your cards. Next up is RemNote, a relatively new app that has already built itself a reputation as the ultimate learning tool among a certain community. RemNote is a purpose-built tool for both note-taking as well as spaced repetition learning. It does this by directly integrating flashcards into your writing workflow, thus reducing the effort needed to create them. If you need to study for some exams or need to memorize a large amount of information for some other reason, RemNote has a few features that are hard to beat. Creating flashcards in RemNote really is a breeze. You just need to type the text for the front side of the card, add two columns to separate it, and then add the back side of the card, and that's it. In fact, I believe that it's so easy it almost feels magical. But even adding more complicated cards like closed deletions or image occlusion cards is relatively straightforward. Especially if you study something like medicine or biology and need to remember lots of information, diagrams and complex definitions, I think RemNote excels there. That's mostly because of its great integration with the image occlusion feature that can still be done in Anki, but is much more hassle there. It's intuitive to use, you can create flashcards quickly while writing down notes, and thus you save a lot of time. In addition to its flashcard features, RemNote also offers very robust note-taking features in general. It too uses the popular Markdown syntax for creating notes, which means that you can even add some more complex features like code blocks, math equations, or even folding blocks to structure your notes. One thing I was especially impressed by are its PDF cross-referencing tools. These allow you to highlight a certain section in a given PDF and then cross-reference it directly in your notes. That's great for reading technical books, annotating them, or even working with research papers, as you can link them interactively with your notes and it really creates one coherent structure of thinking. Handwriting support, however, is a bit of a mixed bag with RemNote. Yes, you can add it with a third-party plugin, but its quality is far from perfect and there are many bugs still around it. Also, it doesn't offer a whole lot of features and thus I can't really recommend it for anyone who really is into handwriting. As much as I already appreciate RemNote for its great features, it's not without its own flaws, of course. For example, it's again closed source software, which naturally raises some privacy concerns. While the company of course claims to respect user data, you really have to trust them with it, as the data isn't end-to-end encrypted. That's definitely a downside compared to Obsidian. Even worse, the AI features of the app don't make it clear what parts of the notes they share with the models used and what parts they don't. Thus, it makes it a no-go for me to use, but luckily you can still turn off these features. For me personally, the fact that there isn't an end-to-end encrypted option available and that you also have to create an account even if you just want to use a local database are deal breakers for me and the reason why I personally don't use RemNote right now. I can fully understand, however, if your priorities are set a little differently and you favor the added value that RemNote offers instead. Another downside is that some of its best features, like the PDF referencing tools or image inclusion cards, are locked behind a paid subscription. So if you are a student on a very tight budget, that might be a deal breaker. However, I think that it's also worth mentioning that RemNote does offer a lot of features for free and it also offers student discounts for those who need it. If you primarily use it for basic flashcards, I truly believe that you can also get by with the free version without hitting any limitations in the near future. All in all, I really believe that RemNote is an excellent tool for many people who need to combine a note-taking with the flashcards app. You really notice that it's a purpose-built learning tool and that can become key in areas like medicine or biology where you have to memorize lots and lots of information. For me personally, RemNote isn't the right fit currently though, since it doesn't really support handwriting that well and it's a huge part of what I do as a part of my computer science lectures as well as math classes. Still, it's great for many use cases if you remember that it's not the most flexible system out there and also not the most secure one. Finally, we come to Logseq. Logseq is an open source tool for knowledge management and is often compared to Obsidian due to a similar approach for note-taking as well as linking ideas together. Sadly, I can already tell you that my experiences with Logseq were a bit underwhelming overall. One of the first things you will notice with Logseq is that it uses a bullet point system for organizing all your notes. It's a so-called bulleter, which means that everything you write down is a bullet point. Now, I fully understand that it's only a design choice and you can use to it if you really want to, but for me personally that's a deal breaker. I really find it difficult to properly organize my thoughts when everything is just a bullet point. To me it feels a bit too rigid and doesn't offer me the flexibility I need when taking notes. Luckily, Logseq also supports the Markdown syntax for taking notes however, and its good out-of-the-box handwriting integration was a pleasant surprise for me honestly. You can directly write into your notes with the stylus and it's also surprisingly smooth while taking handwritten notes. This doesn't make up for the fact, however, that the integrated flashcards features of Logseq are quite basic, even compared to something like Obsidian. So yeah, it's nice to see that the flashcard features are built right into the program, but for example the close deletion features aren't as advanced as in RemNote and much harder to use, and image inclusion cards don't even exist right now. If we shift the focus a bit, we see that it offers an end-to-end encrypted option, which is great to see by itself, but it's still in beta and the syncing process can be a bit hit or miss. If you look for a stable and reliable option for syncing your notes across different devices, you might have to look somewhere else right now. Another thing that bugged me quite a bit is the fact that Logseq doesn't support folders at all. Instead, it only offers backlinks as a way to link your notes together and organize them. I know that this is a design decision again, but it makes everything feel a bit chaotic to me. Just adding good old folders and allow you to easily use them would make this project so much easier to recommend for me. So overall, I truly believe that Logseq has some great potential, especially as an open source tool, but it's just not polished enough and not feature complete right now. Thus, I can't really see it as my go-to note-taking or even flashcards app and can't really recommend it to you. If you really are into the concept of using bulleters or love the open source nature of it, you should still consider giving it a go though. I would love for this project to become better and better over time and ultimately offer a good alternative to Obsidian or RemNote for every one of us who needs to take notes and likes the open source mentality as well as project structure. So what's my conclusion? Is Anki finally dead? Or is it still the king of flashcard softwares? Well, I think that the competition is certainly heating up, and we are surprisingly already at the point where I can recommend something else for certain use cases. RemNote, for example, really is great if you need an all-in-one note-taking as well as flashcard software, especially for fields like medicine or biology, where you work with lots of information, diagrams and images. Its inbuilt features like image occlusion or text closes become handy and you will benefit from it. The user experience of creating flashcards with it is really seamless most of the time, and its note-taking features are also solid. But Obsidian is also a strong contender for a flexible note-taking as well as studying solution with a bigger emphasis on privacy. While its flashcard plugins aren't as polished as RemNote's experience or feature complete as Anki, they still work rather well for some basic use cases. The end-to-end encrypted syncing feature is a big plus for me as a privacy advocate, and the extensive plugin ecosystem offers you a lot of flexibility to customize your experience. Here's what I would recommend for most people though. Don't focus too much on finding the perfect all-in-one solution, you won't. Instead, try building the best overall note-taking plus studying system for you. It can consist of any combination of the above mentioned tools or completely different ones. In the bigger picture, what really matters isn't the tools you're using, it's the outcome and the time you invest into it. For example, you could ask yourself how much time you really save using RemNote's inbuilt flashcard features compared to creating a few Anki cards every day, and whether or not that's worth making the switch. So if you're already very efficient at handwriting your notes in something like GoodNotes and then screenshotting them in something like Anki, you should absolutely feel free to stick with it. For example, I personally use Obsidian as my note-taking tool and combine it with Anki for creating flashcards, simply since I know both of these tools decently well and they offer exactly the flexibility I need. But while this works great for me, it might be a bad choice for you. It all depends on your requirements. That's also why I wouldn't say Anki is dead and why it will likely never be fully dead. There's always a use case for a dedicated flashcard software, just like there is for these new all-in-one solutions. To truly get the most value out of any of these systems, you need to experiment with their different feature sets, maybe combine a few of them together and come up with a system that works well for you. Once you got such a system though, I believe that it's more valuable to just stick with it and do the work at hand instead of trying to optimize the last few percentage points out of it. With that said, as always, feel free to share your thoughts or personal experiences in the comments down below. Have a lovely day, and until next week on my blog Logseq.net or somewhere here on YouTube. Bye!